next, moving from poem, we will also hear from Lulu what kind of creative things she has been doing during this time while she is now in New York and doing her MA, as I said, in adult learning and leadership. So I just want to quickly add that at NYU Shanghai, our two speakers today, Modi and Tim, started online learning throughout this spring semester from February all the way to a few weeks ago in May. And Lulu, studying in Columbia University in New York, she told me they moved to online mode after the spring break. That'll be in late March-ish. So I'll now pass the screen share to Lulu to tell us how she is doing to try to turn herself into a lifelong learner.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Is that good?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm Lulu, and I am currently involved in Adult Learning and Leadership Master Program at the Department of Organization and Leadership in Teachers College, Columbia University. And in this webinar, I am going to share my understanding of what it means to be a lifelong learner as a master student. I will be sharing the learning style and philosophy of education, which will help you come up with your learning goals and strategies for learning objectives examination, and lastly, becoming aware of the learning context given the pandemic time. So before we start the journey, it is vital to know that we are learning on ourselves, for ourselves, and by ourselves. Thus, the most important question for us to think about is, who am I, where am I at, what I want, and what is the purpose of learning? If you do not have the answer immediately, that is perfectly fine, because here we have two tools that will help you to understand more about yourself. So the first tool that we can use to know about ourselves is the philosophy of adult education inventory. So by having this test, you will be able to figure out your dominant learning philosophy, purpose, and preferred methods. So for example, scoring highest at humanistic and second high at progressive, I got to know that as a learner, my learning purpose is to facilitate self-actualization, gain problem-solving skills, and reform society, etc. And as a self-directed, interest-driven learner, I love to learn in a context which which are experiential, interactive, authentic, and open, and problem-solving and project-based learning are highly likely to be the learning methods at my favor. And the other tool that you can use is Cope's learning style. So according to Cope, learning is the process whereby knowledge is created through the transformation of experience. So Cope's experiential learning style theory is typically represented by 4-stage learning cycles, as you can see here. There are concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, and active experimentation. So although this is a typical cycle, there is an inclination that a person would score higher at certain stages. So his or her learning style would fall into one of the listed 9 categories. For example, my testing result actually fall into the initiating, which indicate that my most preferred and effective learning is through initiating action and dealing with experiences and situation. And I think this result actually pretty much align with the result of my learning philosophy. So here comes my own learning goal, which is develop and live an authentic and sustainable life. Meaning that as an individual, I would like to achieve the 8 dimensions of wellness, including emotional, social, spiritual, intellectual, etc., as shown here. Also, as a human being associated with a collective community, I would love to know how can we establish a healthy relationship with the surrounding environment. And I believe creative expression is the way that I can achieve this goal. So following the learning goal, I am able to come up with the learning strategies as a lifelong learner. So for me, aiming for developing and living an authentic and sustainable life through creative expression, my learning strategies are first participate in learning experiences that related to a dimension of wellness and human ecology, and those learning experiences probably would support creative expression. And then I would document the learning and creating process, and then I would produce the creative expression and reflect on the creative genesis, learning and creating process, and maybe generate concept map. And then I would share the creative process and expression for constructive feedback, just like I am doing right now. And then I would iterate the creative expression and concept map, and this is an ongoing process. So now I am demonstrating how I aligned my learning goal and strategies with two of the courses that I took in the past semester at Teachers College. The instructional design of attack, just by looking at the learning objectives here, is a relatively practical course which requires learners to be familiar with mechanics, techniques, and frameworks of the learning design process. Besides the weekly reading reaction that guides learners to reflect on the theories, the group design project provided a project-based learning opportunities for learners going over the instructional design process step by step. Having the freedom to choose my own interested design theme, I decided to design a digital learning game on climate change and sustainability. And by designing this learning game, which I built as a form of creative expression, I was able to explore the environmental, economical, and social aspect of sustainability from a more systemic perspective, which indeed align with the sustainable life part of my personal learning goal. The other course initially caught my attention because of its title, which has authenticity in it. You also can see it explore arts-based approaches, integrating transformative learning theory, authenticity, and individuation into a more holistic approach. And what I love the most of the course is undoubtedly the imaginative project, in which we are able to have the freedom to choose from a variety of creative expression to reflect on what you have learned from the class. So I chose to produce a song and music video on transformative learning towards authenticity in the end. And I believe that this course definitely aligned with my own learning goal as well, especially the authenticity part. So this is actually the music video I made, but I think due to the time limit, I'm not going to go over the entire music video, but I will share with you the creating process. So basically, I use Google Slides, the lowest fidelity style, to create created the animation of this music video. As you can see, in total there are 456 slides in total, and in this music video, I actually portrayed little circles, individual and transformative learning trajectory towards authenticity. So basically here, the little circle start interact with the environment and then construct its experience. And then it come out of the computer screen, starting reflecting on its own experiences. And then it become conscious of the transformation towards authenticity. So it realized that, oh, I really want to be a note, musical note. And then it continuously construct experience through creating meaningful interaction with other musical note, and then with other instrument, and create this musical piece in the end. So as I mentioned, that interacting with the environment and meaningful as I mentioned, that interacting with the environment and having meaningful interaction here, I would like to share more about the importance of being aware of the learning context and your surroundings. So as we know that there was a major transition of the learning environment due to the coronavirus, all of the in-person meetings were modified into online. And this is a huge change in terms of the learning context. We're not in the traditional class setting anymore. All the classes are delivered via Zoom. For the in-class activity-heavy courses, the transition is extremely challenging. Although it is possible to use the breakout room in Zoom for group discussion. However, the instant communication and feedback, as well as those nonverbal signals, which will help our instructors with formative assessment, are actually restricted. This actually made me rethink of instructors' roles in such a new learning context. Should we define them as expert lecturers of learning materials? Are they facilitator of conversation, or there are other managers of the learning context, or they're our learning partners? But for me, since the professor no longer stands in front of the physical room, the power hierarchy seems dissolved. Sometimes I would just hold my pillow and ukulele, while listening to the online lecture, or sometimes I would just stand up and do some stretch if I sit too long, just because the traditional class setting rules do not apply anymore. And the online context also changed the interaction with our classmates and project teammates. Particularly, I will say, is the communication style. It is just too easy not pressing the unmute button and being unresponsive to your classmates. And too much nonverbal communication is actually missing. But one way that I figured out could be a creative solution for breaking the silence is actually to use an interesting virtual background in Zoom, like I have right now, which would usually initiate a conversation successfully. And lastly, the interaction with the physical surroundings. Learning in a dorm apartment in the city or in a house in an urban area actually provided totally different learning environments for the learners. Also, not only your interior decoration, but also your households, members like roommates, parents, or children, or even pets around you would create various learning vibes, since they are all interactive surroundings that would unconsciously influence your learning environment. So for example, being quarantined in an apartment room in New York City right now, I would reorganize my room every other day and decorate my room with plants so that I can make my brain stay fresh. And sometimes my roommate and I would have a writing boot camp together when we have deadlines to meet. And I also bought a bigger screen because the bigger screen is just like more eye-friendly for this inevitable prolonged screen staring time given the online learning context. So hopefully this sharing is inspired, and thank you. This is all.
Hi, Lulu. Do you want to share part of your video? We would love to see part of that.
All of them, or?
Yeah, we can spare a few minutes.
Okay.
If you can put that into full screen, that would be great. Thank you.
I remember my mama telling me what to do with my future. Long, long ago when I was just a little kid, she said stop sleeping the place. Stop me from everything that I thought was interesting. Why couldn't she listen? But she now hear that there's a tons of music calling me. I will flee, making myself afraid. Should I be suffering? Or should I be river wherever I don't lead? I mean melodies and give me melodies helping me. Cause we were so young, cause we were the goddess. should I be bothering? Or should I worry about whatever I don't need? I'm being melodies, hugging me, melodies, hugging me. Cause we were still young. What the heck are you being so hesitant? Cause we were still young. Come on, oh, come on, don't be so afraid. Every day is the day to show your way. Now I realize that I don't need anyone for justification. I am able to choose my own authentic destination in this long journey of transformation to actualization with a brand new and unique. And I will flee, making myself afraid. I am the only me. Why should I worry about whatever I don't need? I'm me. I am empowering. I am embracing me. So we're so young. Cause we never got so much time. Cause we're so young. Cause we never got so much time to stand and enjoy seas our life. Cause we were still young. Why the hell are you being so hesitant? Cause we were still young. Come on, come on, don't be so afraid. Every day is today to show your way.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad you shared that because I know we all loved watching that. I know Lulu has always been a very creative person, but I'm not sure whether this quarantine time has added this your creative power, but we'll hear more from you later in our discussion session.